Good afternoon. Hi. I hope you're doing well today. This is Point of View. I am so grateful that you're with me today. It is such a pleasure, such a privilege just to be alive, just to be in my right mind, just to have my portion of health and strength, reasonable, able to do what needs to be done for myself. And I am just grateful for that. I'm grateful for you for joining me today and for what God has done for you. Dear God, as I sit before you to speak, I pray to you that my soul you will keep. And if I should die before I finish, I pray to you, dear God, in the name of Jesus, that any outstanding sins will be forgiven of me. So today we're going to talk about power. What's up with power? And why is it that so many people don't want to give it up? So you can see going across the screen here why people just don't want to give it up. Isn't it amazing how people do and how they hold on to power, try to keep it, they want it. And we're looking at a situation today where people are holding on and people are saying, hey, maybe it's time for you to give somebody else a chance. And when I look at the situation, I see that a major race is about to go on, is happening now. I don't believe that either one of those two candidates should try for office again. I feel like, this is me, my point of view, I feel like it's time for somebody else to be able to be in that position, somebody with different ideas and somebody who we believe can really do the job. And we vote for people and they get them there and they show us something completely different. Sometimes it's positive and many times it's a negative. But that's just what I'm saying. I don't debate over politics or anything, but I'm talking about this leadership. It is so hard for many people to give up power. It is so hard. So why? And I want to go to my pilot. Let's see. Go to the pilot today. Oh, I have that on my notebook here. People. Okay, the app is gone, so let me go to my pilot. Hear about the power and everything. I have been reading about this, and I tell you, it is something else. And then I also have examples of people who have given up that power and they have been successful in their return. But it's just amazing how people try to hang on to power. And they should be trying to give someone else a chance to do something. Why don't more leaders bow out gracefully? That's one of them. That's psychology today. Then I have another psychology today, how to successfully transition out of leadership. And this is a part one, and it's talking to a professor who bowed out, and she's going to talk a little bit about that in part one. So I'm going to do a part of that, and this is by Dr. Christina Frederick. Dr. Christina Frederick. So, and it's about uh, leadership. Part one: a higher education administrator returns to faculty. How to successfully transition out of leadership. And we see what's going on today, and isn't it an embarrassing thing when it's time for a person to give it up, and then they go out disgraced. That's a very sad thing, and that's what happens to many people. Another thing by Jamie Gruman, PhD in psychology today: how power changes you. how power changes you. And we've seen some people, known some people, know some people who have been in positions of power. Been given offices and different things like that, and they just turn out to be plumb terrible. Okay? Yeah, I said it. Plumb terrible. And then there are some that have made good in those positions, and they are loved and adored by people because they are good. And now I'm not saying that those who turn out bad, they're not loved and adored by some people also. I'm not saying that, so I'm not going to really go really off into that. All right. Powerful traits of successful leaders. I had that 11, but I wanted to do this about talking about power. Where is that? I guess what I'll do is go ahead and do what I don't know. Leaders bow out gracefully, knowing when and how to relinquish power. This is January 2023 um, post, and it's reviewed by Tyler Woods. Key points. Few leaders relinquish power voluntarily. Next, this is partly because power is addictive. Next, leaders confuse their role with their personal identity. And so this right here is what I like. Excuse me, a little rasping, of course. New Zealand Premier Jacinda Ardern was widely praised this week, and this was in 2023, January 2023. Okay, was praised this week for the graceful way in which she announced her resignation. What made her announcement so notable, what made it so notable, and why it is so rare for leaders to relinquish power voluntarily. And we've seen it over and over again. All political lives end in failure. So wrote far-right British politician Enoch Powell in the 1970s. I used to understand this as a statement about the fleeting nature of political power. Specifically, I interpreted it. This is the writer talking, okay? This is the writer of this piece talking. I interpreted it to mean that all politicians eventually lose power and are replaced by rivals. However, these days, I view the phrase a little differently. More than anything else, it reminds me how rare it is for politicians and indeed leaders of any kind to bow out gracefully. And we see it each and every day. This is reviewed by Tyler Woods, and it's by Eli Gottlieb, PhD. Why don't more leaders bow out gracefully? So now we'll go on into it. All right. There's something addictive about power that makes it one of the hardest things to give up voluntarily. And we know about that. There's something addictive about power. And people just don't want to give it up. And there's so much else out here. I was in a position, and I gave that position up in 2013, having looked back, having regretted it, and gone on to even continuing to do the things that God has blessed me to continue to do, and things that I want to do. I do those things, and I am happy. I don't miss any of it. I am just so grateful because of who God is. I am so grateful. And you have to know when it's time to bow out. You have to know when it's time to bow out. And then when you make the decision, stick with the decision that you make. There's so much out here, and I'm going to talk about leaders who have bowed out and uh, who retired and are very successful at it. So there's something addictive about power that makes it one of the hardest things to give up voluntarily. Power corrupts all kinds of ways. It corrupts in all kinds of ways. And we know, yeah, it does corrupt in all kinds of ways. We know about that. Thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate you being here. Power corrupts in all kinds of ways, but perhaps the most common of all is by dulling that most political of senses, the sense of timing. Oh my goodness. Few are the leaders who see ahead of their rivals that the time has come to make way for others. My goodness, time to make way for others. So the writer here says that in my work as a coach and consultant, I see how easy it is for leaders to confuse their role. Listen to this, with their personal identity. He said, in his work as a coach and consultant, he said, I see how easy it is for leaders to confuse their role with their personal identity instead of seeing leadership as a responsibility with which they have been entrusted. Some begin to treat it as a right accruing to them by virtue of their superiority. And I talk about this quite often when I'm talking about people in positions like people in Congress and the Senate, in the House of Representatives, that group of people, how some of those people have been in there 40 something, 30 something, 20 something, 50 years. And it just makes no sense to me. It makes no sense when the same old thing, the same old mindset, when there are so many other people out here who are more progressive, have more progressive ideas that are positive for all of us. But they just sit there and do all kinds of confusing things and they just fight each other. It just makes no sense to me now. I'm talking about them, and it is true. And what it's saying here, they get their jobs and stuff. They act like we are their workers, their servants, their employees, but they are our employees. We voted for them, put them in there, and so many of them have gotten in there. They're going their own way, doing their own thing. Forget about what the people want. Even the Supreme Court, what they're doing, different things like that. The majority can want it a certain way, but they do what they want to. I know they were put in there by the president. We didn't elect them, but the president was elected, and whether he's conservative, whether he's right wing, left wing, whatever he is, Republican, Democrat, independent, whatever he or she is, then they are going to put people in there to suit their ideas, their way of thinking. And so we have got, I say, I say from my perspective, from my point of view, from what I'm seeing, it's just a big old ball of confusion. People are doing what they want to do. They have gotten it mixed up. And I'm saying this again. To me, this is what I see. This is what I see. The coach has said, and I agree with him. He said, I see how easy it is for leaders to confuse their role with their personal identity. Instead of seeing leadership as a responsibility with which they have been entrusted, some begin to treat it as a right accruing to them by virtue of their superiority. It's a short road from here to resisting the transfer of power when the job is done or new energy and perspective are required. And we do need new energy, we need new perspective in those positions. We definitely do. We are stunted, outdated. The ideas that they have are old and outdated, and we need some new blood in there. We need some new blood. I see it like that. It makes no sense to stay in a position for 20, 30, 40, 50 years and go from bad to worse. Okay, so here's an example. There's a scene in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings that captures some of what is at stake in relinquishing power. In an intimate moment of kindly mentoring, and I don't know, I don't watch Lord of the Rings, I haven't watched this, but it's an example. So many of you have. Okay, in an intimate moment of mentoring, Bilbo Baggins spies the one ring around the neck of the young cousin and protege, Frodo, and asks to hold it one more time. When Frodo demurs, and that means when he refused, he told him why, no, I don't agree with it. So when Frodo demurs, Bilbo's face contorts into a monstrous grimace, and his hand reaches out to grab the ring by force. The whole scene lasts a second, and Bilbo soon regains his composure. But it is clear that, despite knowing that his time as ring bearer has ended, Bilbo is driven by forces beyond his control to grasp at power that is no longer his. And we can see things, and that's why we put precautionary measures in place. And when people are thinking about positions, they should be thinking also about a successor because we don't know how much time we have in positions or wherever we are. We should be trying to help somebody else to learn the job and give them ideas so that if they have to take over, then they will come in with some knowledge of how the job is done or to be done. So, because it's so rare for leaders to exit gracefully, it's especially noticeable when one does. While Jacinda Ardern's popularity has waned from its peak earlier in her two-term premiership, her decision to step down does not seem to have been motivated by electoral considerations. Instead, it seems to stem from her sense that she can no longer lead with the energy and drive required, as she put it. Okay? So she realized it's time for me to give it up. I've had my turns, I've had my time, and so there's someone else out there who can do this job because my time is up. I don't want to put more energy into it. I don't want to put more time into it. I want somebody else to come along and they can do the job. So after going on 6 years of some big challenges, she said, I am human. I know what this job takes, and I know that I no longer have enough in the tank to do it justice. It's that simple. And why can't people just say it's just that simple? I don't have it in me anymore, but they just keep on grasping for that power, and some just have to go out disgraced. And it makes no sense. And I see this going on now. I don't want anybody to be disgraced. As in earlier moments in her premiership, many commentators have related her mold-breaking leadership style to her gender. In particular, her readiness to relinquish power is contrasted with the reluctance of men to leave leadership positions voluntarily. As I've written, the author says, however, there is little evidence that men and women lead differently, and nor should we presume that women tend to exit leadership positions any more gracefully than men do. And we understand what he's saying. Nevertheless, Ardern's announcement does provide an interesting opportunity to consider how stereotypically feminine and masculine traits can sometimes be combined to model new ways of leading. As Ardern concluded, I hope I leave New Zealand with a belief that you can be kind but strong, empathetic but decisive, optimistic but focused, and that you can be your own kind of leader, one who knows when it's time to go. I like that, don't you? So that's the end of that. One who knows when it's time to go, and that's psychology today. And this was a 2020, this is a 2023 article. So I'm going on, and the author is Eli Gottlieb, PhD, a cognitive psychologist at the Graduate School of Education and Human Development at the George Washington University and a visiting professor Telecom Paris. All right, Telecom Paris. Now let me go to the next article talking about the leadership, and people just don't want to give up those positions, and it's terrible. It's terrible. Here's an article, uh, Bernie Grumman, PhD, How Power Changes You. Does absolute power uh, really corrupt? Absolutely. Power tends to corrupt. Did I do that? Okay, no, I haven't done that. Power tends to corrupt. I know I've read over and sometimes you read over. Hey, you read it, so I have to make sure that I didn't present it okay. So, hi, thank you so much for being with me today, talking about power. And what is it with power? People just don't want to give up the positions of power, even when they are long overdue for giving it up. All right. Jamie Grumman, PhD, How Power Changes You. Does absolute power really corrupt? Absolutely. August 16, 2021, and this is reviewed by Devin Fry. Power tends to corrupt. Absolute. This quotation from the Lord Action may be the most famous phrase about how power changes people. Power tends to corrupt. This is the phrase. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. And he said this quotation from Lord Action may be the most famous phrase about how power changes people. And I know you know how power has changed people from good to bad, and from then and made them better. Some people are really good leaders, really good leaders, really good leaders. Okay, but is it accurate? Does power always have a nefarious influence on people's character? Power is the ability to exert one's will and resist the influence of other people. In their review of the research on power, Rachel Sturm and John Antokonik, no, that's not right, Antonikis, found that when people are in a position of relative power, it does change them. These alterations manifest themselves in what are often considered the three main areas of psychological functioning. That's thought, emotion, and behavior. This is it. I'm telling you, thought, emotion, and behavior. Number one, thought. One of the ways power influences people is by affecting their thoughts and the way they process information. Research has shown that people in positions of relative power think in more abstract terms. They also process information in a simplified way, which can lead to more stereotyping and a heightened focus on central versus peripheral details of a situation. This is interesting, very interesting. Power has also been shown to make people more strict in how they judge others and less likely to consider other people's perspectives. Power also leads people to be more confident in their decisions and minimize the perceived impediments to their goals. My. This is amazing. I'm going to check my Facebook here and see what's happening here. Thank you for being with me today. Hi, Film. I think I see you. Thank you with me there. Appreciate it. Okay. I'm working well. My sound is doing something with this thing here. Okay. Let me get back to my topic here. What I'm talking about here. Just have to check it out and see what it's talking about. Number two, emotion. We just talked about thought. Just talked about thought. Now we're going to emotion. Power also alters someone's emotional experience. People in positions of power enjoy more positive emotions and higher levels of optimism and do so in potentially challenging situations, such as when leading discussions of controversial topics. They have also been shown to smile more, conceal sadness better than those low in power, and react less in response to stressful circumstances. People high in power have also been shown to feel less distress in the face of others' suffering and reduce the extent to which they mirror the emotional responses of other people. The effects of power on people behavior. Number three, power also changes the way people behave. Those who possess power are more likely to begin a negotiation, touch other people, and take initiative when it is unclear whether such behavior is permitted. In general, power leads people to feel less constrained by social conventions and more likely to violate social norms. Overall, it seems that power tends to make people more comfortable in taking action that fosters their personal goals. My goodness. So the major question here, does power corrupt? Does power corrupt? And we know the answer to that, don't we? It can. Do the changes elicited by power suggest that Lord action was correct? Does power tend to corrupt? The available evidence seems to suggest that Lord Acton, I've been saying action, excuse me please, Lord Acton was only partly right, as Sturm and Antonicus suggest. The experience of power changes individuals in ways that can be either positive or negative by activating individuals' underlying traits or attributes. And remember, a while back we talked about power, and that power brings the real person out, okay? Uh-huh. We talked about that before. Yes. That is, if individuals are morally inclined, power may actually facilitate ethical choices. Other researchers have similarly suggested that communally or collectively oriented individuals tend to respond to power in socially responsive and not self interested ways. Good, good, good. So, Lord, now see it has action on here now. Lord, action was on the right track. Power does corrupt. So there must be a typo here somewhere. It's either action or action. Okay? But so Lord action was on the right track. Power does corrupt. However, it seems to be most likely to corrupt people who have an existing inclination towards corruption. And see, that's what I'm talking about right there. If it's in you, it will come out. If it's in you, it will come out. Wow. So, for those with more socially oriented proclivities, power seems to liberate more honorable aspects of their character. So the available research demonstrates that power does indeed change people. It does. It changes people. It can change them for the better or it can change them for the worse. And so we have to think about that. When we're in positions, we need to really stay focused and do the right thing. The available research demonstrates that power does indeed change people. However, what power seems to do is not invariably draw out the malevolent parts of people's personalities. However, what power seems to do is not invariably draw out the malevolent parts of people's personalities. Instead, power allows people to reveal their true colors. That's it. It allows people to reveal their true colors. And that is the end of this piece. And Jamie Goodman, PhD, full professor in the Department of Management at the University of Guelph, Ontario, Canada. He is also a founding member of the Canadian Positive Psychology Association. I gave him his props. I believe in giving people their props. I believe in doing that. I don't plagiarize. I don't take other people's work for myself. I don't do it. And I had a piece that was telling me about people who have successfully transitioned from power. And I might not be able to get that, but Nelson Mandela was one of them. And I'm going to finish with this. I have to scroll down and get this. This is talking about this professor who uh, stepped down from leadership, and she's giving some pointers on how she did it. So uh, I'm going to get down to that. This is a pretty lengthy piece, but I want to just get down to the part where she did give up the position that she was in. Okay, here's the question. Once you made the decision to step down from that leadership role, what helped ease the transition, and were there additional challenges along the way? And she goes on to say, I had seen other people in leadership positions either leave the university or transition like I was doing and learned that they set themselves up with the right resources to make it work. I identified what I need to do to make the transition successful, including negotiating for the resources I needed, such as having a certain salary. She said, I also thought a lot about what would happen to the people who worked for me, so I negotiated to help them find other comparable positions if my leaving meant they'd lose their current position. I didn't want my leaving to directly affect too many others. If you don't ask, you won't get anything. She said, I also negotiated for a little time off, a sabbatical, before going back into more traditional faculty role. Now, she gave up a position as a lead person in this university to go back into the faculty role. She said it gives you a breather. You don't realize how tired you are and how much you need to adjust and readjust your perspective. She said, I took that time off to plan out what I wanted to achieve and meet with my new colleagues. She said, we think about negotiations for salary into a job, but we rarely think about negotiating when moving out of a job if you're going to stay at the same place. In some jobs, you can stay at the same place, and some you don't, just like people moving out of these political positions. But there is a way to enjoy life after retirement, and then there are consulting positions. People don't understand. There's some consulting positions and just different things you can do, and most of all, when you're in your 70s, 80s, and 90s, just hey, do your own thing. What makes you happy? I'm telling you, oh my goodness, I want to get to that where the people who retired from, and I know Nelson Mandela, Jeff Bezos, and different ones. And I really wanted to present that here today. Successful transitioning out of leadership. Oh gosh, I want that. I did have it. I have it, but my breaker tripped. That's what happened. When you're running these air conditioners, sometimes uh, those breakers need a break, and you need to get that electricity seen about. So I know all about that too. I know all about that too. But I want to find this about looking forward after transitioning out of leadership. Let me see. This is Psychology Today again, and I want to see what this is talking about because I cannot find those leaders. I can find those leaders and talk about what they did after they transitioned out of the leadership roles. Looking forward after transitioning out of leadership. There's so many things that can be done. I tell you, and you don't have to miss any of it. Looking forward after transitioning out of leadership. There's some people we know that are just hanging on, hanging on, hanging on. This is by Myra Branco, and looking forward after transitioning out of leadership. This is part two. Okay, what we just talked about. I thought that name was familiar. And she's talking to Dr. Christina Frederick, Professor of Human Factors at the Department of Embry-Riddle. Okay, let's go on. And talking about, so now, oh yeah, this is good. This is good. Looking back, do you ever miss certain aspects of that leadership life, or do you feel relieved to no longer be in it? That's a great question. She said, there's a little bit of both. She said, I miss certain projects, like the government relations work. It spurred my creativity differently. She said, there was probably some more potential there that I didn't fulfill had I done something different or got into another role. On the other hand, she says, there's something to be said for really enjoying and developing a life outside of work. She said, we, and meaning Americans, define ourselves by what we do and what level of power we have. Oh, listen to this. But she said, I realized I had a lot more time to focus on my personal life, develop myself to be a better person, and reestablish some friendships that for 8 years I had very little time to devote myself to. See, people don't realize, and this lady is making us think that people are just thinking about now, what I have now, what I can do now. I have this power. If I don't have it, then what can I do? Listen, this lady says she had time to go back and uh, uh, some reestablish some friendships. For 8 years, she had very little time to devote herself to. She said, I would say now that I'm very fortunate that my life is not my work, that my life is not my work. It's part of what I am, but I have this whole other part that I really enjoy, full of deep, rich, fulfilling friends and family, and that's something that I'm very thankful for. Oh, she's making us think. What leadership challenges do women still face today, and do you see any gender differences? And see, remember in one of the articles it said and he said that he really couldn't tell if there was much difference in men's leadership and women's leadership. But let's see what she's going to say. She said, if so, what do you think might be contributing, or what do you think we still need to do to support women? She said, while some organizations have certainly gone further in welcoming women into leadership ranks, I think there are a lot of institutions that have not, and they do make it more difficult. Some of the very obvious and basic things are recognizing that women tend to have many more home responsibilities that they have to balance with their professional responsibilities. Even the very latest literature, she said, that I've seen shows that women do 20 plus more hours a week of home stuff, childcare, cleaning, grocery shopping, laundry, whatever it might be, as well as tending to the primary schedule for doctors' appointments and things like that. And we do a lot. But it's part of us, and many of us don't complain about it because it's just what we do. That's a whole other job outside of their professional responsibilities. And she said, I don't think most organizations recognize that. So they don't want to discuss the fact that you might have children and those children pull you away sometimes. If you look at the corporate suites in the boardrooms and the boards, it's a lot of older men. In the organization I worked in, she says there were also a couple of younger guys that had children, but their wives didn't work. So none of the people that I worked for had wives who worked outside of the home, and if they had children, the children were grown. So oftentimes you will see their wife acting as their home admin. Women don't get that, and I think that's still a reality that makes it much more difficult for them. She said you will see their wife working as their home admin, administrating the home. The wives didn't have to work outside of the home. She said there are some other dynamics as well. For example, people that I worked with played golf and they would golf together on the weekends. I never had 8 hours on a Saturday to golf, nor did I want to. Also, see, that makes a difference. She didn't want to, okay? So she didn't regret it. Also, I don't suspect it was intentional, but even their dialogue would create a barrier for women. We go into a cabinet meeting and they start talking about their golf games to the point that I and other women in the leadership were shut out of those conversations. There's a lack of awareness that even that kind of dialogue between the guys creates a dynamic where you're not making women, people of color, or other anyone who's different feel accepted, welcomed, or valuable. Ooh, ooh, ooh. This makes so much sense. And it is so true. She said, I have hope that as we get more of the Gen Xers and millennials into leadership positions, that will change. See, that's what I'm talking about. The Gen Xers and the millennials, they need to get into these positions. Oh, yes. My goodness, this is good. Now, here's another question. Do you think social distancing has affected inclusion efforts, either making it more challenging in some ways or increased insight in other ways? She said, I think there's some good and bad. She said it might be good because when you're on the Zoom call with your colleagues, you see their messy kitchen, or she says kid, but I don't like calling children kids, okay? So I say child or children. Or the children that the child that runs by, or their pet that wants some attention, and you know you hear fresh every now and then. We see people more in their natural environments, and we see that they may have some of the same concerns and issues and responsibilities at home. In that way, she said, I do think it might humanize us all a little bit, even allow us to relate to people that we haven't been able to relate to, maybe. Wow, wow. So she was talking about transitioning into another position. Let me see if I can find another question that we could go. Okay. Any last pieces of advice that you would like to share with women who are considering making a transition out of leadership? We're going to close with this one, okay? But I want to say, and I want to encourage people that are in positions that have been there 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and you're selfish, you don't want to train anybody, you might not admit it, people might not admit it, but they don't want to train anybody because they're afraid somebody will take over their position and all of that. It's time for a change. It's time for a change. There's so much else that we can do. I'm telling you, I enjoy doing this. I have other things that I do. I have my music. I have everything. I was doing that when I was in the positions that I held. When I gave the position up, I willingly gave it up. And I didn't resign. I retired. And I'm happy that I did because there's so much other to life. There's so much more to life than exerting power over other people. You have your own uh, amount of power. You can run your own life by the grace of God. You can do your own thing and stay in your own space and keep people out of your space. Okay? That's your power. You're not giving everything up, but when it's time to go, it's time to go. It's time to go. And so many people have been in positions where it's just time to go. Any last pieces of advice that you would share with women who are considering making a transition out of leadership? And this would be for men too. One thing I think women need to realize is that oftentimes the stereotypical leadership trajectory of moving from one hierarchical position to the next, like in academia, from faculty to assistant dean, then dean, assistant provost, okay, and finally president, is male based, okay. Women oftentimes find that their trajectory goes up, then maybe sideways a little bit, then goes up and then sideways again, and may even go back down at points. That's okay. Sometimes the sideways move is the perfect move. It does not mean that you have permanently sidelined yourself. This linear projection was very traditionally masculine, and it doesn't work for women, and it doesn't work for younger people anymore either. Okay, this linear projection was very traditionally masculine, and it doesn't work for women, and it doesn't work for younger people anymore either. The experiences that you're gaining are important, even if you're not getting the title. And we've got to learn to recognize that better as part of this is those are last things she said. You've got to recognize it better. Don't be afraid. When it's time to move, it's time to move. When it's time to step down, it's time to step down. And you have the power to step down gracefully, to move around. Because you step down doesn't mean that you're giving up. And I don't know who I'm talking to because I'm talking from experience. When it's time, it's time. There are many people that can do what we did, and they can do it more effectively. They can reach other people and do things that will bring more people in. And it's not to say that the position I had was flawed and that I didn't do what I needed to do when I was in the position, but it was time for somebody else to have the position. Oh, yes. And I was just thinking about somebody who gave up a position but were happy to do it and say more effective. And that thought just left me. So I might not get it back before I sign off. But if you're in a position and you know for a fact it could be age related, there could be other things that are in play where you know you can't function and as well as you did in that position, you might just be burned out or burnt out. You might just be that. So don't feel bad about giving it up. You have more that you can do. You can train somebody to do what you do, and then they're going to add their twist onto it anyway. So just bow out gracefully, bow out gracefully, and live on and do the things that you want to do. Like this lady said, friendships that had gone neglected because of the work that she was doing and everything. She went back and reestablished some of those friendships and did so, and she's doing other things. And then she stayed at the place that she was employed, but she stepped down from the leadership position and went into faculty work again because she wanted to. Because she wanted to. And that thought that was it came through my mind while I was talking. I would love to get that back. It was a great example of someone who had stepped down and how they were really, really doing well. But like I said, there's many people, you can look it up for yourself. Hey, look it up for yourself. There are examples of people who have retired and stepped down and they're doing very well and enjoying their life. I really appreciate you for being with me today. I really appreciate you. What's with this power thing? Why is it that so many people don't want to step down and give somebody else a chance? Okay? I love you so much. Enjoy your day. This has been a wonderful day, and I can't think of that, but I can always go on TikTok or somewhere or on my what is it, my blog or whatever it is, and finish this up if I think of it. I love you so much. I love you, love you, love you. Thank you for being with me. You are great. You are wonderful. And God willing, I'll be here on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday at 7:39 p.m. and Sunday at 7 a.m. And oh, look out, look forward to a new show that I have been given to do, and I will be asking people to take part. And the show is entitled. It's going to be great. I'm not going to give you the name of it right now. When I make the announcement, I'll put it up there, okay? And it's going to be, but we're going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about different current events and history, her story, and all those good things. We're going to give our opinions on those things, how we feel about it. They say, if you want, we heard the what is it, the statement. They say, if you want to solve the issues in the world, go to mother, and they usually refer to us, our ethnicity. If you want to know how to solve the problems and get it right, ask us. So we're going to give the people some advice. We're going to give some answers on how we feel in solving the problems of the world. Okay? So I'm looking forward to that. And then the decision has been made that I will move S Pope Light on to Fridays whenever I interview someone at 1 p.m. I love you so much. Thank you so much. Enjoy the remainder of your day.